What's good, y'all? My name is Zach Young, and welcome back to Young Money Sports. And today, I just wanted to talk about the first round of the college football playoff, and more so about the discourse surrounding it, because the talk about the first round of the college football playoff was just toxic and terrible from what all I've seen in the last couple days. There were 4 first-round games played last weekend, and yeah, all 4 of them were terrible. They were all blowouts. There really wasn't much drama or entertainment value from them. The best game was probably Notre Dame and Indiana, and even then, that was just, they really didn't pick up until like the final 2 minutes when the game was all but decided. There were other games were just complete blowouts. It was very boring. I'd much rather watch the FCS playoffs than whatever was going on in the first round of the college football playoff. And given the lopsidedness and lack of any sort of entertainment that came from these games, a lot of people, both on social media and higher levels of sports talk, began to focus their attention on the teams that were getting blown out, primarily SMU and Indiana. As the margins of these games continued to grow, we would keep seeing people, both small accounts and professional football players, former players, and even some sports journalists, continue to lambaste SMU and Indiana for getting blown out and basically saying that they didn't belong in the playoff to begin with. I want to mention Paul Finebaum in particular because he was one of the main guys, these sports talking heads, who was going on and on nonstop about how, Alabama and Ole Miss and South Carolina should have been in the playoff instead of SMU and Indiana, and how it's ridiculous that the College Football Playoff Committee thought they should be in, and he was applauding them sarcastically on what they were putting together. But what's funny is that when his alma mater, Tennessee, an SEC school by the way, was getting absolutely railed by Ohio State, there were crickets. Nothing was being said about how the playoff committee made a mistake. Oh, Tennessee was just having a bad game. Give them a break. It's completely hypocritical. Now, do I think that SMU and Indiana really helped their cases by getting beaten so badly in those games? No. But do I still think they deserve to make the playoff to begin with? Yes. They continued to win their games and play whoever was in front of them, and they earned their spot in the playoff. And you could say the same thing about Tennessee, who got blown out of the water. They earned their spot in the college football playoff. Every time something bad would happen in these games, we would continue to see people talk about how, Ole Miss and Alabama and South Carolina should have been in over them because they were the better teams on paper. Which this whole idea I find completely ridiculous. Like what some of these talking heads like to do, especially when it comes to SEC teams, is just play the card of, they're the better team. And that really dives into just basing your whole argument off of hypotheticals. Maybe on paper Alabama is better than SMU and Indiana, but Alabama didn't take care of the teams they were supposed to beat in the regular season. That's why they're on the outside looking in. You say that you're better than SMU and Indiana and the teams that made it in instead of you, then why are you getting beat by Vanderbilt on the road and getting absolutely destroyed by Oklahoma, who went 6-6 this year? You got to take care of what is in front of you first before you worry about what everyone else is doing. And the same could be said for Ole Miss. How about don't lose to unranked Florida and get embarrassed at home by an unranked Kentucky Wildcats team that would finish the year 4-8? It'd be one thing if these teams had lost to better teams in the SEC like Georgia or Texas or Tennessee, but no, these losses are to some of the weaker teams in the conference, so you have nothing to stand on when trying to argue about being in the college football playoff over teams who didn't lose as many games. And there is a big argument going around about, instead of putting the most deserving teams in the playoff, we should put the 12 best teams in the playoff, which once again is leaning into just basing your entire 12-team playoff off hypotheticals instead of what the resume actually says. If your team loses 3 games and 2 of those games are to unranked teams, and you have a team ahead of them who doesn't have those kind of losses and is higher on the rankings, they should get in instead of that 3-loss team. Not to mention that if these teams were so good and better than everybody else on paper, then why did they lose those games to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma and Kentucky? One other person that I really want to talk about regarding all this stuff is Kirk Herbstreit. I do like listening to him on commentary and on College Game Day, but for some reason when it comes to the SEC and college football playoff rankings, he just has the most brain-dead takes of all time. Just take a look at this garbage.
That I hope next year the committee won't get caught up in what the social media and a lot of people who are fringe fans get caught up in, which is wins. They had 11 wins. They must be good. Who did they beat? I think is much more important than how many wins you have. That's old school way of approaching it. There's a big difference between deserving and best.
Yeah.
What this is all about is giving us the best 12 teams.
And 2017 Kirk Herbstreit and Jesse Palmer, anything to rebuttal? The losses matter. To lose the way Ohio State lost to Iowa, it sent a message that the committee couldn't forget. Wins and losses matter more than resume. Alabama's resume is not even close to Ohio State. They are punishing Ohio State for losing by 31 points to Iowa. So what the hell changed in 7 years to where now the losses don't matter? It's only about if the team on paper is better than the other teams ahead of them. Why do losses get forgiven more now when, like I said, 7 years ago, Ohio State lost by 31, and they were rightly punished by the committee for losing by 31 points to Iowa? I am fully convinced that if it was all SEC schools that got blown out like this, you wouldn't hear a peep out of these kind of guys. They would just be like, oh, it was just a bad game. There was a tough road environment to play in. You know, most teams would go down like that. It was a good fight by them, this, that, and the other. It's just ridiculous double standards that are set by the sports media. Something else that was kind of annoying that Herbstreit did was the next day on College Game Day after the Indiana game, he went on there and basically buried Indiana for their performance against Notre Dame, saying how they were completely outclassed and basically that they didn't deserve the spot. Like, is that really what you're supposed to do as one of the faces of college football? Is just to completely bury a school that had a bad game and got beaten by what's supposed to be a national championship contender? In my opinion, like, these teams should be celebrated more so than getting buried, especially like Indiana and SMU. Indiana, I'm pretty sure I saw they could have like 10 to 15 undefeated seasons in a row and still have an all-time losing record. So for them to have an 11-win season and be in the college football playoff at all is something that nobody really ever expected. And SMU is the same way. Like, this is their first year in the ACC, and nobody thought they were really going to do anything in the ACC. And they make it to the ACC championship game and end up, like I said, in the first round of the college football playoff. But instead of that being pointed out on national TV and celebrated in some way, these teams are just buried into the ground in favor of filleting the SEC bros and all their opinions. And I know, like, this all has come across like I'm angry about this whole situation, but really I'm just tired about all of it. Like, I would like for the people that talk about college football in this situation to look like they actually enjoy college football. Like, God forbid that a smaller school or one that doesn't have a whole lot of success actually has a breakout year and is able to compete for a national championship. Like, it just seems like they're always treated as like a nuisance when one of these schools breaks out and makes it to the college football playoff. And some may point to the recent blowouts as a reason why they shouldn't be let in, but I'm going to let you in on something real cool here. Most of the original college football playoff games were blowouts. Most of the biggest schools and programs that have made it to the playoff have lost a game by more than 3 scores. I should know because my team was the very first team to get blown out in a college football playoff game. And regarding a lot of these smaller schools getting into the playoff, you'll hear some people try to bring up the argument about TCU making it and getting blown out in the national championship game. But what they never want to bring up is that TCU beat Michigan to get to the playoff. They didn't just walk in and play Georgia and get absolutely shit stomped. They earned the right to get their asses kicked. I'll wrap things up here by just giving my quick thoughts on the 12-team playoff as a whole and what this first round has kind of set in terms of the future of it. I don't think that the future 12-team playoffs are going to be this bad in terms of like the first round. I think the second round and onward should be better, but you know, we've seen crazier things happen. But I think that in the future, like, it shouldn't be this bad, and if it continues to be this bad, then there may need to be discussions about shrinking it, even though I know that's not going to happen. If anything happens, they're only going to add more teams to it. I think the maximum amount of teams they should let in is 12. I don't think they need to expand it anymore because you're only going to get worse and worse teams coming in as you expand the playoff. But I think the magic number, the perfect number, would probably be 8. Like I said, I don't think that the first round of the playoff will be this bad every single year. And this also prevents us from seeing like New Year's Six Bowls just hampered by opt-outs and transfers from teams that didn't make the college football playoff. So let me know what y'all think about really anything I've said in this video. I'd love to know what y'all's thoughts are on this whole situation. So that's going to do it for this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all later.
Are we not? Is this not a fun show? No. Serious show? Serious football. Alabama Jones is very serious.